Hi, my name is Jay Phelps, and this is Ear to the Ground. Follow me as I go behind the scenes and capture a rare glimpse into the life of an artist. And today in part 1, I'm with all-round brass man and composer Jonny Enser. We talk about his way into music and incessant drive to make art despite his lifelong mobility issues and chronic pain.
It's funny because anyone who's watching this will see that I'm cooking the thing that I've cooked for like the last 10 years.
Oh, really?
But I haven't cooked it in like a year, so it's quite funny. This has become like my signature. My name is Jonny Enser. I'm a musician, first and foremost. I'm a teacher, an educator, I'm a producer, and I'm a composer. And it's like the majority of things I do. And I like to cook as well. Yeah. Welcome to my house. So I was born and raised in rural Oxfordshire, in a village called Great Milton. It's a place that is known because it has a hotel in it, owned by Raymond Blanc, the chef, called Le Manoir au Quatre Saisons. And I've never actually been there, apart from to work in the staff canteen. But the village, other than that, was majoritively a rural sort of area, so more farms, mostly farms and pageantry, classic sort of countryside stuff. There was a pub, post office, and a primary school. But other than that, everything was pretty sleepy where I'm from, Great Milton. So I've been really privileged when it came to musical education. My grandfather paid for a decent whack of my musical education growing up, and so did my parents. My parents didn't have much of a thirst for like stuff, I didn't grow up with like nice fancy TVs or good cars or anything like that. What my parents spent their money on was developing the house that I grew up in, because my dad's an architect, my mum's an interior designer. I was very lucky to have private piano lessons from the age of 5. Which I always take the piss out of my parents because I believe that it was just paid childcare, because there were 4 of us, so getting rid of all of us in one whack so we all go learn the piano was kind of a couple of hours free for them. When I was 10, someone came into my school and played the trumpet, trombone, the clarinet, saxophone. And when they picked up the trumpet and blew down my ears, obviously, because it's loud and very resonant, went in the school hall, and I was just like, okay, yeah, that's what I need to do.
Before we continue, if you enjoy this video, please make sure to click the like button and subscribe to Ear to the Ground for future videos. Click on the bell to be notified, and see you in the next video.
14, 15, 16, I started lessons with a guy called Duncan McNaughton, who really taught me how to play the trumpet properly, which I still am learning. I'm not going to lie, it's the most challenging thing that I've ever come across.
Oh, I know.
In my life is like how to play this instrument properly. Because he was not a jazz specialist, I then moved on to having some lessons with a specialist called Ben Cummings, who is, he plays in town all the time. He's got the residency at the Savoy and a couple of other places in London, but he lives in rural Oxfordshire. So my mum used to take me for lessons with him, and it would be an hour lesson, but it would always end up being a 2-3 hour long lesson because I would listen. I would listen to him. So I'd say that really those two were like my first 2 really big sort of musical inspirations. And as I said earlier, it was a real privilege because, if I didn't have that, I grew up in a place where there wasn't much culture musically going on. In fact, there was none. In my school, though, there was a couple of different opportunities, and I did like county youth big band. And then when I got to 16, I started coming to London to come to Nijo, because it seemed like the right thing to do. after coming to London the first couple of times, they were recommending different CDs we needed to check out when we, at Niger, and I'd listened to Jamie Cullum's jazz show, so that's how I got introduced to a lot of contemporary British jazz. Got introduced to yourself when you were still in Empirical back in the day. One of the first sort of British young jazz groups I ever listened to do that Ornette Coleman cover and a couple of other tunes. It was a real big introduction for me back then because I didn't do any jazz combo work, so listening to that stuff was like, oh wow, this stuff's crazy. I also was quite into working with my hands and thought being a cabinet maker would also be a really good career. My mum worked doing stuff with furniture, so like it made sense like to do something with my hands or something playing music. But after I went to a couple of festivals in the UK, I realised that watching trumpet players live, the spell that the trumpet cast on a crowd of people was one of ecstasy, one of ecstatic trance, and I realised quite principally that this was what I needed to do. I watched The Gentleman's Dub Club and I was like, okay, cool, right, well, if you can do that and make them do that, I need to do that. So I got in touch with him and messaged him and he was like, I went to Leeds College of Music. So I then was like, okay, cool, so I need to go to Leeds College of Music. Having suffered from depression from the age of like 13 and then making this breakthrough to understanding what it was I needed to do next, I realised that my AS levels, I got 2 U's, a D and a C. So there's no way that this was going to work. Whatever I was doing wasn't working at the time, which was having a lot of fun, but it wasn't working academically or wasn't going to slingshot me into having a career or a life in prosperity. So I realised quite quickly that something had to change. I basically taught myself A-level and the whole A-level, AS and A2 music technology in 1 year because they weren't offering it as a course at my school. I was going between 3 different schools to study the subjects that I wanted to do. I basically just realised that one of my skill sets, above all else, was persistence. Like I knew what I needed to set my heart on. Some of the contemporary releases, we've got, Ciclada and Maisha, got some nice old Donald Byrd, Mulatto Stake, Mongo Santa Maria. We've got some absolute classic Patrice Rushen here. These two, Patrice, all day. This one's got the best funk cut you'll ever hear, a tune called The Hump, where she absolutely kills it on keys and vocals. This one's got crazy orchestrations that she had a hand in doing, full strings, everything. I'm a big Patrice fan. But alongside this, you have to do your auditions to get into music college. And I'm quite a shy, believe it or not, quite a shy person in those settings. When someone's like, play, I'm not the person to be like, yeah, of course I play. I'm more like, is this my space? Do I feel comfortable? Okay, I will play. So this is what I'm now curating in my life, is spaces that I feel comfortable and honest about approaching. So the point of this is that I didn't get into Leeds College of Music, but the teacher that Matt Roberts had was a guy called Neil Yates, trumpet player, and he also taught at Salford University. I did get into Salford University, so I could still study with him specifically. So I knew that Matt was a killing trumpet player, and this Neil Yates guy could play the shit out of the trumpet. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll do that. I'll do this. Sorry, I do keep swearing. So Neil Yates is the point, and so he was like my mentor. Whilst he was a really inspirational figure in my life and someone who really we could talk about anything, so that was why it was a mentorship rather than just a trumpet teacher. We'd spend just as long discussing mental health in a session, and the approach to trumpet as a philosophy, and like the breath and changes and the history of Black American music, and understanding how to do it justice, and how to truly listen and occupy a space. And actually one of the best lessons he taught me was, how there's the saying, don't just stand there, do something. He says it's actually, when it comes to the performance, you can get so agitated and so saturated with ideas and energy that the reminder is, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah, so what are you cooking?
Shakshuka, it's like a North African baked egg, tomato, peppers, onions, garlic, and I'm doing it with sort of arepas, which is like cornmeal pancake. So I don't really like bread a whole bunch, and I think that it is the king of carb. I don't know if it's like a lot of people from Colombia, eat it. A lot of people from Venezuela eat it. So it's like a Latin American sort of style pancake. It's just garlic, onions, peppers, cumin, and like I use smoked paprika, a bit of Creole seasoning. Yeah, there you go.
Lovely.
My life. So I am disabled.
Okay.
That is, there's no two ways around it.
So you have a mobility issue.
I have a mobility issue.
And you've had a mobility issue since you were how old?
Since I was born. So I was born with club feet, which is when
my little brother was born with club feet.
Your brother was born with club feet? Wow. So I had both, but one foot was backwards and one foot was sideways.
Okay.
And so it's it's not hugely uncommon, but I was born at a time where they were doing this particular surgery that my surgeon was a guy called Mr. Benson, and we had it on good authority that he was a world-leading practitioner, leading the way in sort of new sort of technologies or practices around dealing with club feet, or trying different alternative therapies to club feet. And so they ended up doing 3 different operations on my right ankle to maneuver the bones, break the bones, pin them in position in a new place, and take some tendons out from where they were and put them in other places so that I'd have some semblance of mobility. But unfortunately it meant that I only had 15 degrees pitch, sort of an angle of flexibility in my right foot, and have had complete muscle wastage on my ankle. So it's been an adventure. I was never told when I was younger that I was disabled. I never had any allowances made for me, and I've been in pain for the majority of my life without really understanding why, and not thinking that I had anything wrong with me, because why should I? No one told me that I was in pain all the time because of this, and that I ought not to be in pain, because I just approached it by the way that, oh no, I'm just in pain. That's just how it is. You do like a sports day, and it's the most fun time ever. And when you're in year 6, you do it, and you and all your friends are like doing the egg and spoon race and sack race and all this stuff. And I was able to do all of that stuff. But then enter secondary school in year 7, there was like a year 7 sports day, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be fun. I'm gonna sign up for everything. So sign up for the 100-meter race, sign up for the 200-meter race, sign up for the 1500-meter race, being like, this is gonna be great. I love doing this stuff. And then lo and behold, when I enter, and then I try and go and do these things, I come last in every single race, and I get laughed at by everyone. But it's never stopped me from like wanting to pursue sport. So the end of this sort of adventure with my leg is that I'm going to have it amputated within the next 6 months. I'm at the last process of getting there, and it's going to be about 18 months of rehabilitation before I eventually get there. I wonder how much of my like long-term depression and emotional health has come as a result of the constant stimulation of my nervous system since I was very young, and also the othering that I had from the peers, from quite a young age.
Yeah, of course.
But at the same time, you and I both know that as musicians, and especially as trumpet players, it's diligence and persistence that gets us through.
And how does it affect your trumpet playing?
So there's two things that I have to deal with that other trumpet players don't necessarily have to deal with, is that because of my nervous system being like, so you have about 1,000 signals going through your body, you know, from your brain all around your body and back again. Your brain is saying, are you in danger? And most people all the time, probably their hands, their wrists, you know, their arms, their feet, their ankles, their knees, their backs, everything. Hopefully, if everything's working well, means that nervous system's coming back with a signal being like, you're A-okay, you're all right. For me, it's going back and forth saying, you're in pain, you're in pain, you're in pain all the time. So it means that I have to work really hard to have a really steady airflow, one that isn't trembling. So you'll notice on some gigs where I'm like a bit agitated, I'm not focused on my breath properly, and I'll have a waver in my sound, which is something that you can't really hide, you know? You can't really hide that. Like the trumpet is the most exposed instrument. You sit on top of everything else, and it's the loudest one as well. So that's been really challenging, but this is also why I love the tuba so much as well. What's going on with the time?
Okay, the chef has done his thing. Look at this. Look at
Sample right there, isn't it?
It's a bad track.
Yeah, he's just playing tom basically. It's like every part.